In this video, we're going to learn about decomposition. So decomposition is another factoring method, and it works when your polynomial is in the form ax squared plus bx plus c, meaning that it has three terms, that the first term has a square, the second term just has the variable, and the third term is a number. And if it doesn't follow that format, this method isn't necessarily going to work. So we learned this one in grade 10. There are lots of strange steps to follow, and there are alternatives to decomposition that you may have learned if you went to a different school or you were in a different country when you learned how to factor. So for decomposition, what we want to try to do is take these three terms and stretch them out into four terms so that I can factor by grouping. And we do that by taking that middle term and trying to figure out what the two like terms were that we added together in order to get that middle term. So I'm going to look at the number 23, and I want to try to find two numbers that add to 23x. And the clue for that is that they also need to multiply to the same thing as the first and last term. So 6 times 7 is 42x squared. So I need something that multiplies to 42x squared and adds to 23x. Now the clue to finding those numbers, the key to finding those numbers is to focus on the multiplication at the top, right? There are many different things that add to 23, but there aren't a lot of things that multiply to 42. So I want to try to find the right combination of things that multiply to 42. So things that multiply to 42 would be 1 and 42. If I were to add those, I'm not going to get 23. 2 and 21. And if you're having trouble finding this number, use your calculator, right? Do 42 divided by 2. 2 and 21 absolutely would add to 23. So I think this is going to be 2x and 21x. So what we're going to do is take our polynomial and we're going to try to expand it into four terms by saying that we think that this question, there would have been two like terms that we added together to get 23x, and they were 2x and 21x. Now I try to put the one with the 6x squared that I think is going to have something in common, and then I'll try to pick the one that I think has something in common with 7 next to the 7. So I think I'm going to put the 2x first, and then the 21x, and then plus 7. So all I did was I took out 23, and I wrote 2x plus 21x, which equals 23x, right? I left the 6x squared, I left the 7. And now that I have four terms, I can group. So we're going to group together the first two and the last two. You should get the same answer if you put the 21 first and the 2 second. So from my first pair, 6 and 2 both divide by 2, and they both have an x. 6x squared divided by 2x is 3x. And then 2x divided by 2x is just 1. From my second pair, I have 21 and 7. They both divide by the number 7, and you do want to take out the largest number that they have in common. And because the first of those two terms is positive, I'm going to take out a positive 7. So 21x divided by positive 7x is 3x. And then 7 divided by 7 is 1. I notice here at this step that these two brackets are the same. Now, if those two brackets are not the same, then you've done something wrong. So when you're factoring by grouping, not every question will factor by grouping. But when I use this method and I find two numbers that add to the middle term and multiply to the first and last term, it should always factor by grouping. So if you are not getting the same brackets here, it means one of two things. Either you made a numerical error in these steps, or these two numbers do not actually multiply to 42 and add to 23. So since I did get the same two brackets, that's good. We're going to common factor that out. And we would be left with, from the first one, if I divide out the 3x plus 1, I'm just left with 2x. And from the second one, if I divide out the 3x plus 1, I'm left with 7. So I have 3x plus 1, 2x plus 7. If you factor it and you get the answer 2x plus 7 times 3x plus 1, that's the same answer. It does not matter which bracket comes first. Either one is fine. It just depends on what order you put the 2 and the 21 in when you were doing your grouping. Okay, so there is one question for you to try. The answers are at the bottom. If you would like to try it and then see me work through it, you should pause the video, try the question yourself, and then if you have any problems, just hold on and I will explain in a minute how I would do the question. Okay, so I have 10x squared plus x minus 3. So the first thing I need to do is try to figure out what we're going to put in place of that plus x. So I want to know what were the like terms that I used to collect together to get plus x. So I need two terms that add to x. That is a 1x, by the way. And the clue to help us is that it's going to multiply, those two terms will multiply to the same thing as the first and last term. So 10 and negative 3, if I multiply those together, I get negative 30x squared. So we're looking for something that makes negative 30x squared. Okay, so I'm going to think about the multiplication number, so that would be the 30. I'm going to try to think of things that multiply to 30. So things that multiply to 30 would be 1 and 30. Now, one of them would have to be positive and one of them would have to be negative in order to get negative 30, but I cannot make a 1 out of a 1 and a 30. 2 and 15, if I subtract, I will either get positive 13 or negative 13, so that's not a 1. 3 and 10, I can't make a 1 out of a 3 and a 10. 4 does not divide evenly into 30, but 5 does, 5 and 6. So 5 times 6 is 30. If I made this negative 5 and positive 6, that would give me positive 1. And negative 5 times positive 6 would give me negative 30. So I'm going to do negative 5x and then plus 6x as my two numbers. Okay, so from here, I'm going to take out that x and I'm going to put in negative 5x plus 6x or 6x minus 5x. It doesn't really matter what order you put them in, but I try to pair up something that I think would go well with the 10 and then something I think would go well with the 3. So I think the 5 goes better with the 10, so I'm going to do 10x squared minus 5x plus 6x minus 3. And then from here, now that I have 4 terms, we are going to group. So 10x squared minus 5x, they both divide by 5 and they both have an x. So 10 divided by 5 is 2 and x squared divided by x is x. Now negative 5x divided by 5x would be negative 1. From my second pair, I have 6x and 3. They both divide by the number 3. And I'm going to do positive 3 because the first term is positive. 6x divided by 3 is 2x. Negative 3 divided by positive 3 is negative 1. I notice these two brackets are the same. They should always be the same when we're doing decomposition. So I'm going to common factor out the 2x minus 1. And in the second bracket, the 2x minus 1's divide out and we're left with 5x. And then here they divide out and I'm left with plus 3. So this is 2x minus 1 times 5x plus 3. You can join me in the next video to learn about difference of squares.